In a quiet village nestled between lush green hills, life ticked along predictably. The air was filled with the scent of freshly plowed soil, and the sound of cows mooing mingled with the laughter of children chasing each other. In this unassuming corner of the world lived Raja, a young man with eyes that gleamed with unspoken dreams. His hands were calloused from working in the fields, but his heart longed for something more. Raja had always been different from the others in his village. While most boys his age aspired to expand their family farms or secure a steady trade, Raja's mind wandered to stories. He had a fascination with the tales brought to life on the silver screen, stories of bravery, love, and triumph. It wasn't just the glamour of the movies that captivated him, it was the magic of storytelling, the power to make people feel something deeper than their everyday lives allowed. But in his village, filmmaking was considered a foolish pursuit, a far-fetched dream belonging to people from distant cities. Raja's father, a stern man with a strong sense of duty, reminded him often, "Dreams don't plow fields or fill stomachs." These words were meant to tether Raja to reality, but instead, they only strengthened his resolve. One ordinary day, while wandering through the village market, Raja stumbled upon an old film camera, abandoned and covered in dust. Its metallic surface was tarnished, the lens cracked at the edges, but to Raja, it was a treasure. His fingers traced the worn edges of the camera, and his heart raced with possibility. Though he had no idea how to use it, he felt an inexplicable connection to it. He could almost hear it whispering stories waiting to be told. He bought the camera for a mere few rupees, using the money he had saved from odd jobs around the village. As he walked home, cradling his new prize, he was stopped by a man sitting under a large banyan tree. The man, dressed in a tattered kurta, had an air of mystery about him. His voice was soft but carried weight as he said, "Young man, the power to tell stories can shape the world. But be warned, it demands courage." Raja paused, surprised by the stranger's words, but before he could respond, the man simply smiled and walked away. Intrigued, Raja continued home, his mind racing with the possibilities of what this camera could mean for him. That night, in the dim glow of a kerosene lamp, Raja inspected the camera. It was battered but functional. As he turned it over in his hands, he imagined the worlds he could create with it. He didn't know how or when, but in that moment, he made a promise to himself. He would bring stories to life, no matter what it cost. The first step of his journey had begun, even if the road ahead remained uncertain. Raja's days began to take on a new rhythm. When the village awoke to the crowing of roosters, he was already up, carefully tinkering with the old camera. He borrowed tools from the blacksmith and spent hours repairing its fragile mechanisms. Every scratch on the camera felt like a testament to its history, and Raja treated it with the reverence of a sacred relic. As weeks passed, his efforts paid off. The camera, though old and imperfect, was finally functional. Raja felt a surge of triumph as he looked through the viewfinder for the first time. The world seemed different, framed, focused, full of possibilities. But his joy was short-lived. He knew he couldn't openly pursue his dream. The villagers, steeped in tradition, wouldn't understand, and his father would never approve. Raja began to sneak away during breaks from farm work. He ventured into the fields, the marketplace, and even the quiet corners of the village, capturing moments that others overlooked. Children playing in the mud, women drawing water from the well, the blacksmith hammering sparks into life. All these became his subjects. He wasn't just filming, he was discovering the soul of his village. Word spread quickly. In a small village, secrets rarely stayed hidden, and Raja's activities soon became the talk of the town. Elders gathered under the banyan tree, muttering disapproval. "He's wasting time on foolish pursuits," one of them said, shaking his head. "Who will tend the fields if he's busy with that contraption?" The criticism reached Raja's father, who confronted him one evening as he returned home. "What is this nonsense I've been hearing?" his father demanded, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Do you think stories will put food on our table? Do you think this village needs a dreamer when what it needs is a farmer?" Raja tried to explain, but his words felt inadequate against his father's anger. "This camera," he began, holding it up, "can show the truth. It can capture who we are, what we feel. It can tell stories that matter." But his father shook his head, dismissing Raja's passion as youthful folly. Despite the growing opposition, Raja found an unexpected ally in the mysterious bard who had first spoken to him. The man, who seemed to appear and disappear like a shadow, shared stories of legendary filmmakers and the power of cinema to ignite change. "You have a gift," the bard told him. "Use it to tell the stories that others cannot." Inspired, Raja started working on a project close to his heart. He decided to document the daily struggles of the villagers, especially the plight of the farmers. One evening, while filming near the fields, he stumbled upon an argument between the village head and a poor farmer. The headman's cruel words and the farmer's desperation painted a vivid picture of the inequalities in the village. When the elders heard about Raja's footage, they were outraged. "This boy is meddling in things he doesn't understand," they said. Threats followed, with warnings to abandon his project. But Raja refused to back down. He knew his camera had the power to make people see what they preferred to ignore, and for that, he was willing to take the risk. The air was tense as Raja prepared for the most daring step of his journey. He had spent weeks editing his footage, piecing together a narrative that reflected the struggles, hopes, and injustices of his village. Every frame was a labor of love, and every second carried a message he believed could spark change. His film, which he titled The Voice of the Village, was ready. But showing it to others was a risk he wasn't sure he was prepared for. The elders' warnings echoed in his mind. They had made it clear that exposing the flaws of their community would be met with harsh consequences. Yet, Raja couldn't shake the words of the bard. "Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it." Those words gave him the strength to move forward. Raja decided to organize a secret screening. He chose the banyan tree at the edge of the village, a place where the young often gathered to share stories and dreams. Word of the screening spread quietly, carried by whispers and cautious nods. On the night of the event, a small crowd assembled under the tree, their faces lit by the faint glow of a makeshift screen Raja had hung between two branches. As the film began, the crowd fell silent. The opening shots showed the lush fields of the village, the rhythm of daily life, and the warmth of its people. But soon, the tone shifted. The film revealed the struggles of the farmers, the corruption of the village head, and the silent suffering that had become a part of their existence. Raja had captured moments that most chose to ignore, and now, they were impossible to look away from. The reactions were mixed. Some watched with wide eyes, moved by the honesty of the film. Others muttered in disapproval, their pride stung by the raw portrayal of their community. When the film ended, a heavy silence hung in the air, broken only by the sound of crickets. Then, a young farmer stepped forward, his voice trembling as he spoke. "What Raja showed us, it's the truth. We all know it. We've just been too afraid to say it." This sparked a wave of murmurs, some in agreement, others in protest. One of the elders, visibly angry, shouted, "This boy has no respect for our traditions. Who is he to judge us?" The crowd began to divide, arguments breaking out between those who supported Raja's vision and those who saw it as an attack on their way of life. Amid the chaos, the bard stepped forward, his calm presence commanding attention. "This is the power of a story," he said, his voice steady. "It forces us to confront ourselves, to see what we'd rather ignore. Raja has given you a gift, a chance to change, to grow. Don't squander it." As the crowd slowly dispersed, Raja stood under the banyan tree, overwhelmed by the weight of what he had unleashed. The bard approached him, a rare smile on his face. "You've started something," he said. "But the question is, are you ready to finish it?" The bard then revealed his true identity, a retired filmmaker who had once faced similar battles. He offered Raja an opportunity to leave the village and learn the craft of filmmaking in the city. It was a chance to hone his skills and tell even greater stories, but it came at a cost. Raja would have to leave behind the very people he wanted to help. The choice was clear but not easy. Raja knew he had to decide, stay and fight for change in his village, or leave to follow his dream on a larger stage. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on his heart as he realized that either path would change his life forever. Raja stood under the banyan tree long after the crowd had dispersed, his mind racing with the bard's offer. The thought of leaving the village filled him with both excitement and guilt. The city promised new opportunities and the chance to master his craft, but it also meant abandoning the very people whose stories had inspired him. As dawn broke, he made his decision. He couldn't leave. The village was his home, and its people were his muse. He believed that real change had to start from within, and he wasn't ready to turn his back on the community that shaped him. With renewed determination, Raja set out to use his camera as a tool for transformation. In the days that followed, Raja began filming again, this time with a sharper focus. He sought out the untold stories, the resilience of the women who worked tirelessly to support their families, the silent struggles of the laborers, and the traditions that brought beauty and meaning to their lives. His films weren't just about exposing flaws anymore. They were about celebrating the spirit of the village while addressing its shortcomings. Despite initial resistance, people began to notice the impact of his work. One of Raja's films, which highlighted the plight of farmers affected by unfair practices, caught the attention of a local journalist. The story was published in a regional newspaper, bringing outsiders' attention to the village's struggles. It wasn't long before filmmakers from the city visited, intrigued by Raja's unique perspective and raw talent. But not everyone was pleased. The village head and some of the elders continued to oppose Raja, accusing him of bringing unwanted scrutiny to their community. "You've made us a spectacle for outsiders," one elder said angrily. Raja faced their criticism with quiet resolve, reminding them that his work was for the greater good. Slowly, their hostility began to soften as they saw the positive changes his films were sparking. One evening, Raja organized another screening under the banyan tree, this time with the support of the villagers. The film celebrated their heritage, showcasing the festivals, the songs, and the laughter that made their community unique. As the credits rolled, the crowd erupted in applause, their earlier divisions replaced by a sense of unity and pride. Raja's work began to inspire others in the village. Children, once hesitant to dream beyond the fields, started to see possibilities in storytelling. Raja took them under his wing, teaching them how to use the camera and encouraging them to find their own voices. He saw in them the same spark that had driven him, and he knew that his journey was no longer just his own. It was now a shared legacy. Years later, Raja stood once again under the banyan tree, surrounded by a group of eager young storytellers. The camera, once a solitary symbol of his dreams, had become a tool for collective change. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the village in hues of gold and orange, Raja felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. His journey had come full circle, and the stories he once dreamed of telling had become the stories that defined his life.